Thanks for joining us. This is the hospitality edition of the Venari Podcast. So today I'm joined by Jennifer Fox, who's going to chat with us today a bit about her career and ultimately what's next in the future for her as well. So Jennifer, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Steve. It's great to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
No worries.
Yeah, so I'm an Australian and I've had a very international career. I started my career in Australia and then I joined ITT Sheraton, and that was before the Starwood days, and I took a role with them as a Director of Marketing in Central Australia in Alice Springs. From there, I was transferred to the Gold Coast in Australia, and I opened a great hotel after that in Melbourne. From there, I transferred to the United States, and I spent 10 fabulous years working in the US as General Manager, and then when Starwood took over ITT Sheraton, I took the role as the Global Vice President of the Sheraton brand. Mm-hmm. After a period of time, I then was recruited by IHG to go to Hong Kong. I took over the Intercontinental Hong Kong as the Managing Director. And after 3 great years taking over what was then the region and turned it into the Intercontinental, I was transferred to London. I spent 8 years as Chief Operating Officer for the Intercontinental brand in Europe, and then was recruited by Fairmont to move to Toronto as President of Fairmont Hotels and Resorts. And from there, I'm now looking for a new opportunity, somewhere, of course, in the hospitality and tourism space. I've just spent 5 years as a non-executive director for Village Roadshow, a conglomerate entertainment group in Australia.
Amazing. So let's backtrack massively. So the initial jump from Australia to the US. So how did that come about? Were you comfortable making that jump? I know a lot of people in hospitality at the moment have got to relocate for the right role. Were you comfortable doing that at the time? It's quite a big move.
Yeah, no, it was a great move, and I was really comfortable. I'd always, as a young woman in Australia, had a desire to live and work internationally, and particularly the US. So at the time, though, the company offered me 3 roles. One was to go to China as Senior Vice President of Marketing. The other was to be a General Manager in an Australian hotel, and then the opportunity to move to the United States as a General Manager. So naturally, I took the move to the US. And I guess because I was transferred to Dallas, Texas, in some ways there was a little bit of the same sensibilities as the Australian culture. Sure. And I felt like I adapted into the US very, very, very well. And I actually did my MBA while I was in Dallas, Texas at Baylor University. So I just had an incredible experience.
Yeah. And out of the roles that you've had so far, what's been the most enjoyable role that you've had?
You know, that's a question I've been asked several times before, and it's a really tough one to answer because if I look back on them all, every experience sort of built on the next and got me ready for the next experience. I loved being the managing director in Hong Kong. That was an incredibly challenging role to take what was an iconic hotel, the Regent, and then transfer that to the Intercontinental. That was just a wonderful challenge, and it was very successful. I loved Hawaii, you know, the Orchid at Manalani. Again, I took over that as a general manager from the Ritz-Carlton and rebranded it. But then also to my global roles, you know, with Starwood and my global role with Fairmont Raffles, I adored. So I actually can honestly say I've never had a job that I didn't like.
That's good. That's good. And so, and for people outside the hospitality industry may not know, but in these types of roles, I'm guessing you're on the road a lot. What did that travel schedule look like for you? Were you out Monday to Friday and only back home on the weekends, or how was that?
Well, I'll go back to my most recent global role, which was with Fairmont Raffles International, FRHI. I was traveling 300 days a year, and I wasn't home a lot on weekends either because we had offices in Toronto, Zurich, Dubai, Singapore, and Shanghai. And as president, I had great people leading the regions, but I was in the regional offices about 2 weeks a month in each of the offices. So I was on the road a good 300 days a year, and I would catch an overnight flight to either Dubai or to Shanghai or wherever it was I was going. You'd land in the morning, you'd quickly shower, and 2 hours later you'd be in the office. I think the thing with that is you learn how to manage your body clock, you learn how to manage your work-life balance, and I actually enjoyed the travel. Travel's always been a passion of mine from a very young age. And actually now in this last 12 months with COVID and not travelling, I think I'd rather be travelling a lot than travelling not at all.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what I was going to ask as well in terms of work-life balance, because when you're on the road so much, how did you keep that balance in check? Were you doing stuff to make sure that you did have a life outside of work, and what kind of stuff do you do outside of work that keeps you motivated, keeps you busy?
Yeah, well, the thing is, I've always loved what I was doing. There's never been a time where I resented the constant travel, and I think you just got to keep yourself fit. Stick to your own basic rules. Like, I always make sure I get enough sleep. I always make sure that I exercise. I also don't have any kids, and my husband is very flexible. He works in the technology sector, but it's been nothing for him to say, okay, well, you've got to be in Dubai over the weekend. I'll fly to Dubai and meet you, or let's meet. If you've got to be in the US in LA and I've got to be in New York, we'll meet. So we used to spend time always looking at our schedule for the next 3 months. And then saying, okay, well, this is where we can meet up. Yeah. I think it's harder for people that might have a young family, but at this stage of our career, he and I both really worked hard to find those moments where we could meet and get together.
Makes it more special, I suppose, as well, when you do meet up in the middle and can do that. And what do you think is going to happen moving forwards with meeting people face to face? Do you still think that's really important to do? Do you think Zoom and video technology is going to take over, and work travel schedules will be a lot less than they were before? Or?
Well, I am an optimist about this. I think we're on a path now where we're coming out of the worst of it, particularly with people getting vaccinated and things such as that. And I think the Zoom is great, and I've done, like all of us, I've done most of my work on Zoom, but you can't create that personal connection with people over Zoom. And particularly if you haven't met anyone, and I know people that have hired people and tried to onboard them during this crisis, and it's really difficult to build relationships. And I don't know about you, but how many Zoom calls have I been on where somebody can't hear, or the technology doesn't work, and one person, doesn't feel that they can contribute because they're not good at using Zoom. So I actually don't think that it will ever replace face-to-face meetings. But I do think in terms of the recovery of our industry, the tourism and hospitality industry, it'll start off with leisure travel, and then it'll be business travel, and then it'll be the big incentives, meetings and conferences. I think they will be the slowest things to recover. But I'm already hearing a lot of my friends in the industry, and I'm already hearing a lot of my colleagues and things such as that, all now starting to plan their travel. So, people are really looking to September to start business travel again, is what I'm seeing.
Yeah, that we did. Much needed.
Yeah, absolutely.
The industry.
We've been a long time locked up.
We certainly have. Okay, well, one question that I've got for you, being a senior leader and a woman, on paper, you've had a great career. You've held some really senior leadership positions. So do you think your gender has played a part in you not getting roles, or do you think it's played a part in you getting roles that maybe you perhaps wouldn't have? I don't know, it's a bit of a grey area at the moment, and it's a tricky subject, but do you think it's ever held you back?
It's interesting. We just did, and I'm a member of this group called Women in Hospitality, which is a fairly new group, and we did a sort of like a workshop the other day. A lot of women, senior women, discussed this issue. So I've just been talking about it recently, and it really made me really think about that. Look, I don't think I've ever been really disadvantaged about a role because I was a woman. I know when I went to Hawaii as a general manager, I was the first female general manager of a luxury hotel in Hawaii. Oh, cool. When I went to Hong Kong, I was the first female general manager of a luxury hotel in Hong Kong. And from my early days in my career, I always thought to myself, I'm going to make sure that, for example, I used to travel as a young director of marketing with a group of guys that were all much older than me. And I always had a few rules, never be late, because they'd all say, oh, she's a woman, she's running late. I'd never let them carry my bags, carry my own bags. Yep. Make sure I pick up my fair share of checks if we go out to dinner and, split the bill. I didn't want to have the female side of it play into me, the guys going, oh, I've got to travel with this woman. So I really don't think it has disadvantaged me. And I try never to worry about it because I can't control it. What I always do is try to be measured on my results. And, my results are going to be just as good as any man, if not better. Yeah,
absolutely. And what advice would you give? I suppose there was some great advice just there that you've given, but would there be any advice that you would give to any young professional, a young woman in hospitality who's just started out in her career?
Absolutely. The first thing I would say is to have confidence in yourself and don't get imposter syndrome where you think you're not good enough for a role because you are. And, say yes, take opportunities. I think one of the reasons I think I've been successful, and particularly when I joined Fairmont Raffles, I don't think I would have been attracted to them as the president if I hadn't lived and worked in Australia, Hong Kong, the UK, the US, they liked the fact that I had that global experience, so I was culturally sensitive. And it's sometimes difficult to say, okay, well, I've got a life here and I've got a family here and I've got friends here, and then you get offered a job on the other side of the world. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have to trade some of those things to build your career. Now, I'm not saying you always have to do that, but I know for myself, I'd be 3 years somewhere and I'd just start to feel like I belonged in that city, and I'd build up a nice network of friends and I was happy. Then I'd get a call from corporate, hey, would you be willing to transfer to wherever? And I always said yes, and I've never regretted it.
What do you want to do next? What's interesting for you? I know you've been approached by roles that you've turned down, so you're fortunate enough where you can be quite picky when it comes to the role that you do next. So what's interesting for you?
Yeah, well, look, I think it's really important at this stage in my career, and for anyone at any stage of their career, is to make sure that the next move is the right move. So I have had some opportunities for various reasons. They weren't perfect, and I suppose not every role is going to be perfect. Look, I'd love to take on a CEO of a hotel company, a smaller hotel company, or a CEO role in a larger organisation. Mm-hmm. I'm also quite interested in board work. I've been on the board of Village Roadshow, which is a publicly listed company in Australia, for 5 years. They just went private. I've been chair of the Corporate Governance and Nominations Committee. I've been on the Audit and Risk Committee. So board work in either the consumer space is also quite interesting. So, I'm quite open and quite flexible. And, as I said, I've lived a very global life, and I'm willing to continue to do that for the next stage in my life. And so I'll just work with people such as yourself and see what opportunities come up. And I think that, the right one will come up where I'll be a good solution to somebody's problem.
Mm-hmm. My take on it is that it's such a strange time to be doing a job search in general. But I think as long as you're keeping busy doing the right things, and like you've been doing a lot of board work recently, there's parts where you can do consulting work. Yes. There's lots of different options to kind of keep yourself in the game, so to speak. And I'm sure some of your network is probably one of the best networks within hospitality, just because some of the companies you work with and the people that you work with. So it's just about knowing how best to utilize that and position yourself for that next role. So.
And that's been the fun part, because I have had the time to be doing some project work and some consulting work. And with that kind of work, you're working on very, very different projects, and I'm working on 3 right now. And I find them all fascinating and interesting. Mm-hmm. So I still do a full day's work. I still get up every morning, and I still do, and I enjoy it, because I'm doing projects that I find, very, very interesting to me. So, it does give you the flexibility to do those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been great talking to you. Thanks a lot for coming in and for being part of this and being the first person on Venari Hospitality Podcast. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing how we can help you moving forward.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thanks,
sure.
Steve.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.